Ah, treehouses, a status symbol for spoilt middle-class kids since the dawn of time. But is there a place for them in horror movies? Let's find out. Hi guys, now for me, one of the most underappreciated zombie films of all time is The Zombie Diaries, and seeing as I am in a very kind mood today, I'm going to give you the name of another highly underappreciated zombie gem, and that is The Zombie Diaries 2. Both films are co-directed by Kevin Gates and Michael Bartlett. I don't know about Kevin Gates, but Michael Bartlett went on to do some other movies, one of which is this one, Treehouse. This is a film about 6 youngsters who agree to meet up in the woods of Missouri late at night to just hang out for a bit, I guess, you know, get to know each other a little bit better, maybe cook some marshmallows, all the usual stuff that youngsters get up to in the woods. But they are then terrorised by some kind of group of villains. They may be human, they may be supernatural, and I'm not going to give that away because the film doesn't give that away for the longest time, actually. And I'm presuming that most people watching this video have not seen this movie, so I'm not going to spoil it for you. It's going to make doing the review harder, but I'll give it a shot. So we begin with a prologue where a young woman, one of the main characters, she's coming home from college maybe, and she returns to her little house in the woods. It's a very nice house. And she discovers muddy footprints all over the place, and her little brother is missing, little Bob his name is. This confused me at first because with a name like that I just presumed that she was calling out for the dog, but I cottoned on eventually as to what was going on. It's a very good opening. It takes place over maybe 5 to 10 minutes. This girl creeps around her house very, very slowly, but it's highly effective. I definitely got vibes of Never Hike Alone and a little bit of Slender Man towards the end of the sequence, but we definitely get off to a good start with this, and then we get a little bit of meander with a few scenes around the town, lots of talk about a local festival and a bit of a never-ending story tribute with some bullies, and then we're into the main cut and thrust. We're into the main action and the story of these 6 youngsters who get into trouble in the woods. The treehouse in this film is not what the film is about. The treehouse is just a random location that some of the characters stumble into and they're able to use as a kind of shelter for a while just to stay off the radar of the main villains. So the treehouse is only used for maybe a third of this, or maybe a little bit more, but perhaps fittingly, the best material in the film takes place in the treehouse. That and the opening, I would say. There's some really creepy nighttime shots of whatever the villains are just somehow getting on top of the treehouse, and all the little noises they make, the scrabbling around noises sort of thing, and the characters inside are just frightened for their lives. My absolute favourite moment in the entire movie is when the characters are in the treehouse and they get on like a little walkie-talkie, because one of the girls who turned up late for the party, she's on another walkie-talkie somewhere else, and at first she's coming through in this crackly voice saying she's fine, and then she's nervous, and then she can hear something, and then she's in trouble, and our main characters listening to this are just helpless. All they can do is listen in, really, and it's a really creepy little scene where we're just listening to this girl on the other end of this thing, and the music's just pounding down on you as well, just persuading you to be even more scared about it. One cool thing about this is that some of the characters turn up to the party late, which means that they die off camera. We never actually get to see them. So I guess we can't actually call them main characters in the proper sense, but I like this approach. It won't be for everybody. Some people like to see all the kills, you know, that's part of the reason why they watch horror films, to see all the gory, juicy kills. But me personally, I've always appreciated a good off-camera kill. When it's done right, it can be highly effective, and that is the case at least a couple of times in this movie. Plus, keeping all the focus on just a very small amount of characters, 3 characters in this instance, it just means we can have more actual characterization and personality work done on those people. The standout for me is Dana Melanie. I can't remember the name of the girl she's playing, but I like this actress. She's really good. Obviously she looks the part, but her line delivery, I just like it a lot. I liked her after the prologue, and then she disappears for quite some time, and I remember thinking to myself, oh, what a shame that that girl from the prologue never came back. But then she suddenly does come back, and I was really thrilled about that. The older brother, played by Daniel Frederick, he's also very good. He's doing a kind of Dean from Supernatural type approach to it all. You know, he's the protective older brother. He's very cool in terms of his demeanour, and he'll stand up to bullies and stuff. I liked him a lot, and actually, if I'd have been doing this movie, one big change I probably would have done is have him end up being the main character. Now, obviously, this would mean changing the entire DNA of the film, because there's this whole subplot going on in this whole character arc where the younger brother, who does survive the whole movie, he starts out as this little dweeb at school who can't stand up for himself. He's more than a little pathetic. But by the end of the film, he's learned to rise up and become brave, and he finishes this actually with a hot girl in one arm and an M16 in the other, and yada yada. I get all that. So a lot would have had to have been changed around to make the older brother the main character, but I just found him far more likeable. Plus, I think a romance between him and the girl would have been more believable than the actual romance that we get. And also, there's a high degree of action in the finale, but using the younger brother for that was a little bit troublesome for me, because I felt like the film was falling over sideways to get this younger brother to survive all these confrontations, whereas with the older brother, who'd already proved himself physically in the first part of the movie, I would have not even doubted for a second that he could have taken on the villains. Plus, the younger brother, he's very hit and miss as a character. There's nothing wrong with the acting here. I forget the guy's name, J. Michael Trautmann, I think his name is. His acting's fine. It's the character I've got a few issues with, like when he shouts out from the treehouse, like, "Run, if you're out there, run." I'm like, "You're giving their position away, just stop it." I mean, that is just something you don't do. I'm like, no. And then a couple of scenes later, he does exactly the same thing again. He shouts out. I'm like, "Stop it, you nonce." He does have some good moments as well, though. You know, you can see his character evolving throughout the film, and you know that's done fairly well. Easily my favourite moment with him. So he's carrying a condom around in his pocket from earlier in the night, when maybe he hoped he was going to get laid at this party, maybe. But he's also carrying a couple of candles, and I just think it's absolutely hilarious that he does that. It's like. So let's say that he had pulled at the party and he'd managed to get a girl up against the side of a tree or something. Is he just going to stop beforehand and say, "Hang on, before we get going, I'm just going to set up a couple of candles on this branch over there, like, just to add a little bit of mood to the whole thing"? What do you reckon? So, you know, this isn't a bad character or anything, but it's just very, very hit and miss compared to the other two, who I thought were excellent. My only other negative is that I didn't always believe that the characters were in a really high treehouse. It did occur to me several times that filming was probably happening in a hut quite close to the ground. Mr. Bartlett would have to clear this up for us in terms of how these scenes were filmed, but a couple of times my immersion was just shaken a little bit, mostly by the body language of the characters. It's not like there's anything glaringly obvious in the edit of this film that would give away that they're not in a treehouse, but a couple of times I kind of felt like the actors weren't quite acting like people stood really high up. Like there's one moment where the older brother is stood right on the edge of this platform, facing away from the drop, and I just feel like if you were genuinely that high up in like a windy treetops, you wouldn't be standing right on the edge like that and looking really cool and confident. And a couple of times when the characters are climbing up, they're not quite gripping the thing like in the way that you would in this situation, knowing full well that one mistake and you're going to break your spine. It looks like they're just ambling up onto like a little low down shooting area or something like that. But this is something that maybe not everybody would feel when they're watching this film. Maybe it's just me. I think what the film could have done maybe is a couple more like establishing shots from the ground, ideally, where you look up and you see a character like stood on the platform, just to sell the idea to your brain that they are actually up there. But for whatever reason, because of budgetary reasons or safety or whatever, it does kind of occur to you, I think, when you're watching this, that you're not quite getting all the shots from the different angles that you would want, maybe, with this treehouse. But it's not a massive thing. I would like to talk more about the villains, but I'm a little bit handcuffed here because of the fact that I said no spoilers. When they are revealed, they do look a little bit crap, in all honesty, but when you think about what they've done in the movie off camera, they become a lot cooler, you know. Plus, when you've had the full reveal, certain things earlier on that didn't make sense now suddenly become a lot clearer. Like there were times where I was thinking, why are the villains doing that? Why are they doing that? But once I had the full knowledge, a lot of that earlier stuff became a lot, you know, easier for me to sort of process. And it's interesting how the characters perceive the villains in this film, what they assume the villains to be. The prologue, which I love, the girl gets one glimpse of one of the villains briefly, and it's a completely different villain really to what we eventually get. But it's interesting that this is what she's seeing in her big moment of panic, giving chase, because she's trying to chase down Little Bob, whatever his name is. It's really funny how her brother's called Little Bob, and she calls her new love interest Little Bear or Big Bear or Cuddly Bear or something. But again, this is just why I really like that character a lot. But on the whole, fun film. Definitely worth a midweek watch this if you've got Amazon Prime or you want to get yourself a cheap DVD or whatever. Not quite in the same league as the Zombie Diaries, but if you're somebody who has directed the Zombie Diaries, it must be very, very hard to follow up that level of genius. They are films that I really do adore. But when it comes to Treehouse, let's get to the bag of terror and find out what we've got. So we've got 1, 2, 3 bloody axes out of 5. That was Treehouse. There is not a Treehouse 2, so I will not be coming back to do any more on this. I think my next review will probably be The Descent 2, maybe. But until next time, thank you for joining me. Cheerio, bye-bye.